Splendid. Welcome to another Commit Happy Hour here on Friday, the 16th of October, 3:30 here in the UK, and I've got no idea what time of the morning it is with Kim and Barry on the other side of the world. Here today with Commit, we are going to be looking at how materials management software supports the Digital Forum. I think it's one of the things that I've noticed in a couple of projects I've been involved in of late is the amount of materials we waste, not only in wastage of destruction of materials or not managing them on site, but also getting to them site in the first place has been quite significant. And that obviously pushes up our carbon content, our costs overall, and also our impact on the environment, on the society that surrounds our construction site. So here today we've got Kim and Barry who are going to be talking through some of the things that help to support a digital forum. But before we do that, I'm going to hand you over to Stuart to look at a little bit on the productivity workshops and what we've been doing in a Commit of late. Stuart, over to you.
Thanks very much, Ian, and thanks very much to Barry and Kim for joining us today. I'll kick off with my first slide. For those that aren't familiar with Commit and are new to the call, I can see there's quite a few new attendees today. Commit's been around since 2003. It's a collaboration platform that looks at bringing industry together, be it a vendor, be it an owner, be it academia, research and development, or even a contractor, and looks at opportunities to develop solutions. Commit's been working with its members now since 2003. We were initially a government-funded project, and after that completed, the members elected to take it on themselves, and we have been delivering projects since. The recent project that we just completed and is now being rolled out was to deliver a problem or a solution to a problem, which is the COVID pandemic, and that's going out to projects just now. But as I say, we've been around for quite a number of years doing just that. Some of the early projects turned into organisations and businesses of their own right, and are thriving. In the background, we've been running a productivity improvement initiative, and the purpose of the webinars was to underpin that and bring into existence some of the technologies, or showcase some of the technologies that are actually making a difference in industry. And today's session is no exception. There's some excellent technology delivering some real improvements, and I won't steal any of Barry and Kim's thunder here, but hang fire just a few more moments and you'll see what it's all about. Before I get there, one of the things I want to say is if you've got any questions, then a couple of options: either write it in the box on the right hand side in the control panel, or raise your hand and I'll get to the questions at the end. But please do think about the questions as we go, and as I say, raise them as we go, or ask at the end. The productivity initiative is something that we've been working on, as I say, for quite a while, and what I will say is behind all technological initiatives is in our industry is a simple goal, and that is improving productivity. Often the best improvements come from a combination of knowledge, it's the people, process and the technology. COMIT has identified with the major barriers facing our industry and has developed an opportunity with its members to create enablers with the potential for huge beneficial change that would lead to across industry productivity improvements, and essentially what we call in Commit a fingerprint for success. The initiative we've entitled Commit to Productivity brings together owners, it brings together contractors, academics and solution providers to collaborate and seek new ways of enablement through process improvement and ultimate demonstration projects. The ultimate aim of this is to reduce capital project costs by up to 30% and a reduction in our cycle times of up to 10%. The areas that we've looked at so far are the ones that you can see on the screen, and the session today cuts across and it's highlighted in the bright orange the areas where Barry and Kim will explain how those improvements can be had, if you like. And there's some pretty good things to show and share. So as I say, I won't take too much of Barry and Kim's thunder. What I will do is I'll just talk now about some poll questions, and we have some poll questions coming up here. So Barry, you want me to deliver the first question? I say every week there's no curveballs, but today I have a curveball. So let me just bring the first one in. Let me bring the first one in. As it's the month of October, as it's nearing the end of the month, have a look at this one.
Oh,
to trick or treat or not to trick or treat? Voting is open.
Well, personally, I will either pretend not to be at home or turn the garden hose on the little swines.
Spoil sport.
I'm a shocker, you know. I really am. Yeah, kids aren't my world. Definitely not.
Trick or treat.
The Victorians had the right idea of putting them in factories, putting them up chimneys and down coal mines. They can pay.
Okay, we've got nearly everybody voted on that. Thank you. I'm going to close it. I'll share it. Okay. 22% bring on the candy. Fantastic. Yeah. 56% no, my kids are staying home. 11% will talk to the neighbours first, then decide. And 11% what's trick or treat? Goodness me. Well,
very healthy answers.
Absolutely.
Very.
Yeah. So, you want me to run the next one, Barry?
Let's go for it. Yeah.
Okay. There's the next one. Where are you joining in from today? Are you in Europe, North America, South America, Africa, Asia?
Well, you see, having watched the news today and Mr. Johnson telling us that we have now gone for a no-deal Brexit, that I can't really tick any of those, Stuart.
No?
None of the above?
Which is a great pity, really, because we are, of course, stronger together. But, yes.
Absolutely.
Too bad there's no other option.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, do we mean mentally or physically? No, I'm kidding.
Well, mentally, I'm on a Caribbean island somewhere with nice beaches, gin and tonic. So we're all European today.
Well, I'm not sure about that because I did actually see the registration list and there was quite a few people. Well, I won't say they're all in Europe, but they're certainly spread around. But there you go.
Perfect.
Nobody's admitting it. Fantastic. Thanks everybody for that. Okay. Next question. You want me to leave that or do you want me to do that now?
Yeah, you can go ahead, Stuart.
Okay. Right. So what type of mobile devices has your organization standardized on?
Yeah, so interesting point here. Just trying to understand, what devices are being used by the various different organizations represented, and we'll touch on what goes into making this decision or recommendations on making this decision a little bit later on here.
I can certainly say that quite a lot of the critical national infrastructure organizations or ones that are working on projects for them have steered away from Android devices purely because of a lot of the issues with data safety and probably have gone more towards Microsoft Windows ones. But I know I don't know whether Steve Slater from Waits is on, but they went for the Windows devices recently. Ah, there you go. 44% went for Android.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm curious about the 33% with none. Hopefully we change that today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks everybody for voting on that.
Although quite a few organisations haven't really standardised as such, which is where perhaps the none is coming from, in the fact that we have a bring your own device policy. And it would be more of a, you bring your own device and we'll work how to put the virtual network onto it.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay. Next question. How do your construction projects request materials today? So is that a paper ticket, docket, email ticket, fax? Fax? Did somebody say fax? Goodness.
What is that?
Radio,
Yeah, what is that? Yeah.
radio, phone call, text.
Way too often.
I still see them quite often when various houses or offices I visit, they're still there.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
In fact, I have a fax machine in my office here. It's built into the printer, so you just get it anyway. But the capability is there, although I don't know whether it works because I've never received a fax on it.
If you keep it a couple more years, Ian, you can take it on the Antiques Roadshow.
There you go.
Perfect.
So I'll share that. I'll close that up now. Oh, goodness, look at that. Share. So 13% paper ticket, 50% email, 75% shared spreadsheet or other software system. Goodness.
Quite good.
Any thoughts on that, Barry?
Yeah, no, that's great. Appreciate you putting those up for us.
Okay. Thank you everybody for voting on that one. So next question, Barry, do you want me to do that one? Standard preference.
Yeah, let's go ahead with that one as well.
Okay. So what is the preference for selecting digital solutions in the field? Everybody see that? Yeah,
we can see that there. We'll touch on this a little bit later in the presentation. Just interested to hear if there's what the opinions are of the group.
Wow.
Yeah, I've got to admit, I've seen all three being used. Definitely. Whether they've had an all-in-one that's been sort of pushed on them by the lead appointed partner, or whether it's something that's they've got in-house already and they push that down to the individual bits of the supply chain, and also seen the manual methods way too often. Yeah.
Good solutions. Okay, interesting. Perfect.
And still an opportunity in the fact that some have not got any digital at all.
Yeah.
And
we'll touch on this one as well.
Yeah.
Toss up the last one there, Stuart. Be great.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for voting on that one. And just put the last one in here. So when selecting a digital solution, what feature is most important during evaluation?
So there's lots of different technology stacks and things like that on the market. Newer platforms and applications and things like that. Some homegrown, some that are maybe a little bit more a little older, for example, but still do the job. Just curious what the most important one would be when evaluating.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? When that whole IT sort of question around whether you're cloud hosting it or whether you're hosting yourselves on premise is always a big compromise between security or perceived security, IT cost, and access. The number of IT departments I've seen which are not quite capable of allowing supply chains to have access into their systems, whereas putting it on a cloud, you know, anybody who is needing to get access to it or has authorized access to it can do so without having to jump through all those hoops.
And the other kind of side of that as well is, yeah, you mentioned data security and things like that, and we're seeing like a pretty good culture change in the industry to moving to more cloud hosted or based solutions, just you know, so that they don't have to necessarily handle the infrastructure and the network themselves, right? So
I was going to say, yeah, we're looking to decrease our IT costs, and in doing so, we're pushing it back onto our SaaS type providers.
Yeah.
Exactly. Interested here, yeah.
So,
that's great results as well.
Okay, great. So let me close that out now. And I'll move on to the next slide and introduce the session. So today's session, thanks again to Barry and Kim. The COMIT Happy Hour is how materials management software supports the digital foreman, and we'll hear from Barry in just a second and Kim. But let me introduce both of them. Barry is a product manager at Intelliwave Technologies, where he works closely with SiteSense end users and the software development team to create and launch the next generation of digital construction solutions. For more than 7 years, Barry has continued to be an advocate for bringing construction clients' requirements to life that will ultimately help remove the pain points by providing elegant solutions, lovely, I like that digitize manual construction processes. And prior to joining Intelliwave, Barry received his BSc in Computer Science Engineering from the University of Alberta. Barry is currently registered as an active member of the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of Alberta. In his spare time, you'll find Barry engaging in sporting activities, spending time with his family, researching his next travel destination, or generally just being the life and soul of the party. Fabulous. Thanks, Barry, for joining us today. And we've got Kim. I love that bio. Brilliant. Kim is the Vice President of Business Transformation for APTIM. She has more than 30 years experience in the engineering and construction industry. That experience spans the services of EPC, PM, CM, maintenance and turnarounds, environmental and disaster and response recovery for both oil, gas, chemical, government markets, with a focus on technology and innovation drive. The depth and breadth of that experience has provided great opportunity to observe, learn, and even affect the evolution of how we work in delivering those services. While slow to the table, the construction industry is now demonstrating with great appetite for technology. It's an exciting time to be in construction, and therefore even more exciting to wake up every day knowing your mission is to find ways to transform how teams work using process technology and productivity initiatives. Let's talk about a few. Right, thank you very much, Barry and Kim. I'll now hand over to you, Barry. Bear with me 1 second while I just change the presenter. Okay, Barry, it's all yours.
All right, thanks so much, Stuart.
Yeah, you have control.
Perfect. Yeah. We'll go ahead and share my screen here. Let me know when you guys can see that.
Yep.
Okay.
I can see that. Yep.
All right. Thank you so much for having us today. Really excited to be here. Kim and I have worked closely over the last number of years here to really take a hard look at how technology can essentially help the construction industry. And part of that is what we're going to be discussing today around how we can marry software with digital initiatives at the various organizations. So really appreciate COMIT, Stuart, Ian, Jerry for organizing this for us today, and obviously Kim for being a part of this as well. So we'll kick it off here for your happy hour event. Hopefully you have a happy hour beverage. We have coffee here. It's early morning in Canada and the US where Kim is calling in from. So we'll kick it off here. Obviously we just did a bit of an intro here on the presenters, so appreciate everybody joining the call today, and I look forward to good discussion here. What we'll kick it off with really quickly is, really the star of the show for the presentation today. So the company's called Intelliwave Technologies, and we have a product called SiteSense. So SiteSense construction software is a cloud-hosted, web-based application. We also have mobile applications available as well in iOS and Android. So you can download them on the stores, etc. You can take the data offline, for example, in cases where you might not have connectivity, 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi, those types of things. And really the focus of what we're going to be looking at today is around materials and inventory management. So how can we use that platform to support folks like Kim and their Digital Foreman in the field? How can we provide them with data that they need to really be able to execute their work effectively? Tools and equipment control, so being able to manage your assets and things like maintenance, utilization, fuel consumption, being able to track all of those in a digital platform so you can report on them in real time. Being able to identify who maybe has them checked out as well, so you're trying to create some accountability for tools and equipment to be checked out to individuals. How do we maintain those assets and make sure we retrieve them back? Track and trace module is an enhanced visibility way of adding things like various different types of sensor technologies like IoT devices like passive RFID, active RFID, Bluetooth low energy, etc. There's lots of different options on the market on how you can essentially enhance that visibility. A lot of folks don't necessarily think about IoT or devices like that in construction, but I can tell you from experience that it is definitely something that a lot of folks really see a lot of value in, and we can talk a little bit about that as well. Tying into how there's even the way to use automation to trigger events in a system like SiteSense. So being able to update milestones or progressing, for example, based on automated events such as geolocation updates or things like that. Tying all three things together in a workface planning module. So you've here are things like advanced work packaging, work plans, things like that. How can we really use this information about the resources that are available to us, whether it be materials, tools, equipment, crews that are available, to really focus in on resource constraints around how we can actually execute that work in the field. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, but really look at a study done by FMI, really around big data, right? So if we look at the construction industry in itself, in some cases considered a bit of a laggard for technology and things like that. I think most people would agree from that standpoint, but there's a lot of thought leaders as well in the construction industry that really lead the charge. Folks like Kim, for example, bringing a lot of innovation to the table. And if we look at the study, 96% of data capture goes unused in engineering and construction, which is a pretty staggering number. Looking at how folks are physically using that data. For example, if they take 13% of their working hours are spent looking for it as well. 30% of E&C companies have applications that don't integrate. So where does this data come from, right? Like this data can be anything from say sensor technology to say drones, even wearables and things like that nowadays. GPS, data, email, transactions that are maybe financial or design plans, weather, tons of different sources of data nowadays. And really, what can we do with this data to really make it so that we're really leveraging a little bit more, right? So we can take that data and we can use it for things like early risk detection, through predictive analysis, things like machine learning and AI as well, to try and use this information to really drive, more predictable and more informed decisions in the field, ultimately affecting your schedule and your budget on the project. Using it to have more accurate, measures of equipment and productivity in the field. So, if I understand that I have a trend going the wrong direction, I'm able to potentially have corrective action and be a little bit more, proactive versus reactive in trying to solve that issue, for example. And then, software platforms out there nowadays, they serve up a lot of real-time data. But what if you have many different platforms that don't talk to each other? So from that standpoint, if you can really connect those platforms or have things like, for example, like a data lake or a data warehouse or places that you can go to really visualize all of your information in a way that a lot of companies really would benefit from. And tying that into really what we're looking at and focusing on today, around really materials management. And this is a drawing here of essentially the life cycle. And we're going to touch on the far end of the life cycle today with the Digital Foreman webinar. The site receiving and logistics piece as well, which comes previous to that, is a great topic we'll touch on a little bit today as well. But the other kind of piece to this is really the front end piece. So the procurement and supply chain aspect of this life cycle as well. How can we use this information to essentially get more people involved earlier in the process to essentially set up the other pieces of the puzzle a little bit more effectively? And when we look at this process, if we look at how folks actually spend their day, for example, on a construction project, Construction Industry Institute out of the University of Texas has done many studies on productivity, which basically looks at an average day for a worker, and what they find is about 30% of their day is physically spent on tool time, wrench time, productivity, things like that you'll hear in the industry, and really that's kind of a staggering number. So there's 70% of their day physically not spending with a tool in their hand or building a project, things like that. So really this amounts to a lot of wasted time at the work front. And how can we use data, for example, or use systems to really increase productive tool time? Various different things go into what type of time they're spending, for example, with unneeded communication or administration or travel time, driving and walking around a job site, double and triple entry, or even entry errors that come from collating something after the fact. So if we can use digital systems to enable folks to be able to process that information in the field, for example, eliminates in some cases the need for that back-end administration and can essentially make that process a lot more efficient. You can also use things like I mentioned previously around the IoT space, so sensors and technology like that, where you can basically reduce the amount of time it takes to locate material in the field by, for most studies, you find you save about 10x on your time period to actually locate the same piece of material using technology versus manual methods. Additionally as well, using mobile devices, something as simple as being able to look up a document or be able to mark something up on a device, whether it's a drawing or looking up the received or delivery dates for items. Who did I issue that material to? Who picked it up? Those types of things. If I need to go back to a trailer or an office to look something up in my email, or I need to look it up in a filing cabinet, for example, I need to make a phone call, need to get on the radio, all different things that are distractions that can really hinder the process of actually getting the project built, for example. And how do we enable essentially technology to help construction, right? So luckily for us, a lot of technology has been skyrocketing in how advanced it is today, and things like mobile devices. Certain mobile devices have more power than your average PC, for example, right? They have better cameras, better GPS, all these different things. So, and as we see now with Apple coming out with their next version of their iPhone and things like that, there's tons of different ways that we can utilize devices in the field to really empower the users to make it just as easy as pulling out their phone to check the weather. Well, they pull out their device to check materials. They pull it out to check tools and equipment, those types of things. So being able to have that more reliance, for example, on a mobile device on a construction site. And when we talk about bringing technology as well to the job site, there is a inherent feeling of maybe there's a safety risk or things like that. A lot, just like everything, right? If you're you consider a mobile device a tool, for example, right? You have rules, regulations around how they're utilized and things like that, right? So in a lot of ways, we'll take the approach of teaching folks to instead of walking, staring down at a device, they'll be looking up to the horizon, they'll be stationary, those types of things. So you can really combat that by putting in proper rules and regulations for folks to follow. And then things like cloud hosting as well, right? So a lot of companies are switching to more of a cloud hosted preference for their solutions. We saw that in the poll question there as well, just around how some companies are trying to cut IT costs, push the onus back on their vendors, just like in certain cases you'll push requirements back to a supplier or things like that. In this case, we're doing the same thing back to our software providers in those cases. And we look at things like Wi-Fi, 4G, 5G, various different really fast, stable connections to applications and data. Things like, for example, when we look at folks working from home, if they didn't have cloud-hosted solutions or great Wi-Fi or things like that, we couldn't communicate like we are today. We have the ability for folks to access that data in a really easy to use fashion. So it's just on your cell phone. It's a website that you navigate to that you're used to using your laptop or desktop every single day. And the construction data collection side is really around things like IoT devices, or a lot of different ways that we can collect information using mobile devices at the work front. So something as simple as Bluetooth, for example, right? We have wireless headphones nowadays with Bluetooth. We have sensors we can detect with our phone. We can pay with our phone at a terminal, for example, at a store. There's lots of different ways that that type of technology is great in retail and manufacturing and really set processes. But how can we take that and push it to construction? There's a lot of great opportunities for that. And just want to go back a little bit to that first poll question there that we asked about what type of mobile devices has your organization standardized on. And what I wanted to touch on here is what factors play into selecting a mobile device. And really the kind of key factors that we look at are whether or not there is certain IT restrictions around apps that you already currently use today. Ian mentioned earlier about data security. So Windows, Android, iOS. There's lots of different options out there nowadays. And folks want to make sure that their data that they have on a device is safe as well. If you look at things like operating temperatures, do you use the device in outdoor conditions with a dusty environment or things like that? Do you need to put a case on it? Do you need to have a really great camera? Do you need to have advanced GPS? Those types of things. So all of those types of things play into how we actually go and look at recommending a device standard to an organization in cases. And the other kind of touch point there as well is if we look at how construction projects request materials today, a bit of a laugh there around the facts, but I have seen it before. And paper tickets are definitely still used today. We're getting to the point where folks are maybe using an online Excel file, or maybe there's an in-house software or something like that that folks use. But what I wanted to touch on with Kim, is just around, what benefits, can be seen, or has APTIM seen, for example, for adopting a digital solution like SiteSense for requesting materials and really giving the foreman in the field the ability to look that information up themselves on a mobile device.
So, Barry, that all the technical things that you talk about are very important, and someone in my role or in a technical role from a business analyst perspective looks at all of those things and has to consider all those things. But I can tell you, our Digital Foreman initiative, as a company, for those listening, it is not a piece of software. Don't think that our Digital Foreman is a piece of software. Our Digital Foreman is an initiative. And it's an initiative that is focused on, and after talking to Stuart this morning, I'm so proud to say to you guys, is productivity, right? So when selling to our leadership and when understanding what we were doing with this initiative and what our goals and KPIs would be, everything is centered around productivity. And then our approach to that, which is I think somewhat different, I would like to say is differentiating, is that we are very focused on the people in the field. We're very focused on our foremen. We're very focused on that front line. We're very focused on keeping them there working and, quite frankly, their success. And we feel like in turning that pyramid upside down, so to speak, so that we're all working for them and our systems and our technology are all working for them, we will have opportunity for greater success. So in looking at those technical things, Barry, we're very interested in user interface. We're very interested in best-in-class functionality given the topic or the objective of the activity. And so those are the primary things we've looked at for the Digital Foreman.
Perfect. No, that's great, Kim. And building on that as well, right? I mean, getting those folks involved really early in the process, like you mentioned, getting them, involved in testing and samples and looking at devices and how they're going to use them in the field and things like that. And like you said, right, looking at that initiative as a holistic ecosystem of tools and things like that to really allow them to be more productive, right? And that's the kind of key there. And we tie that into, you know, kind of our topic of today. So like Kim mentioned, the Digital Foreman initiative, you know, really focusing around when SiteSense is involved, you know, looking at, you know, the kind of pieces that feed into that. And that's folks like maybe the Workface planners who, you know, are going to be, you know, trying to serve up information to that Digital Foreman, and being able to actually have the foreman be able to rely on folks like the materials coordinator to be able to actually get those materials, you know, to the right place at the right time, for example, for them, so that they can, you know, essentially, you know, plan their work. So if you spend, you know, days and days looking through drawings, or you're trying to identify if material has arrived or not, making phone calls, those types of things, there's got to be a better way, right? So if there's a way that we can use tools like SiteSense, for example, to enable that user to use one of their tools to be able to execute work a little bit more productive, and let's go for it, right? So we look at things like how does the Workface Planner get involved? So we have various dashboards and things like that that they can use to, you know, really forecast that availability, whether it be, you know, what's the date that it's required? Is there an actual, you know, differential between when it's going to arrive versus the, you know, required date? Is there a projected date for when it'll be here? Can we get the vendors involved on the other end from a digital supply chain perspective to update those dates? Can we go ahead and actually identify whether or not there's an order shortage? Is there an on-hand shortage? Do I need to get procurement involved to solve the order shortage? Do I need to get the expediting team involved to solve the on-hand shortage? Those types of things, and really trying to identify, you know, 30, 60, 90 days ahead, do I have what I need to actually execute my schedule and keep to it as well? Because any deviations from that obviously cost time and cost money, obviously, right? So, and then we look at the Digital Foreman in the field. So being able to actually request materials. You know, I've been on project sites before where we come in to, you know, try look to implement SiteSense, and, you know, previous to that, you know, they're talking about scenarios where they, you know, have a request from a foreman, for example, and the 20 line items they're looking for, and only maybe 2 or 3 of them are there. So you spend time trying to find out whether or not the 20 are there, 2 or 3 are there, and they don't need that because that's not enough to maybe execute their work, for example, right? So if we can empower them to be agile enough to, you know, be able to, you know, look at the scopes of works that they have to execute, put the requests in, for example, that materials are actually available. So those items are on site, or we know where they are, we have an eye on them, for example, we have pictures of what they look like, those types of things, and really tying that into the material coordinator side. So being able to, you know, reduce the amount of time it takes for those materials to be, you know, provided to that individual. So being able to do things like kitting or bag and tag, and doing this by package in those cases. So for example, if you were to request by package and you're able to pick and hand over by package as well, right? You're essentially handing over the kit of goods, for example, maybe the IKEA shelf, right? That needs to be executed, for example, right? You've got all the pieces and parts you need to essentially execute that work. And if we identify where items are currently stored, be able to use things like sensor technology as well to be able to look for those items a lot quicker. And then also being able to capture this information related to, you know, handover of those materials, for example, to the work front, and being able to do that in a digital fashion, be able to, you know, scan badges to fill in on, you know, handover information, something as simple as, you know, say an email address is 25 characters, but we have it populated in the system automatically. Something as simple as that, if you do it 20, 30 times a day, you know, that type of thing, right, can take a lot of time, right? So something very simple where you can digitize through a barcode or things like that can really save a lot of time. And the next piece here, I just want to kind of round out, you know, functionality aspect of, you know, how SiteSense can help all projects. So, you know, really, if we talk about the digital supply chain aspect, from procurement to design, fabrication, expediting, and shipping. So being able to actually load in information, you know, from, say, like the vendor, for example, for shipments, and be able to actually have those dates updated in the system, you know, really taking carbon copies of your POs, and then also being able to take your design documents as well, and even updated information for fabrication as well, and having all this information kind of a centralized tool. We looked at the site materials management piece as well, where, you know, you're actually having materials be received. We're looking at OEM requirements for preservation and maintenance, make sure that we maintain our warranty on those items. And then, you know, we talked a little bit about the Workface Planner, and also the folks that are actually requesting and issuing and consuming those goods. But why stop there, right? Let's take it all the way through to the installation and the commissioning phase and things like that. So using SiteSense's progressing tools to do things like, for example, take a look at punch lists, or be able to do inspections or turnover to a client, and then even taking it into the operations and lifecycle maintenance phase around how folks can identify when this material or when this equipment was delivered. Do we have an installation date for it? Do we have a serial number? Those types of things, right? So being able to take that a little bit further, from what we discussed today. And just going back to that kind of digital foreman questions there, I just wanted to frame up some of the benefits that, like how APTIM approaches selecting digital solutions for Kim, and why do you take that approach, I guess, and that kind of ties into our next slide here.
Yeah, so Barry, so this journey, guys, around the digital foreman, and it has been a journey, which I'm sure those of you that have tried this have realized as well. It started slow, and I know because you've also looked at AWP and you guys are very involved with AWP, I will tell you and share with you that our AWP implementation is what gave our digital foreman initiative legs and life. Okay, because it folded in well to what we were up to with that. And we started our digital foreman by, as Barry mentioned, we did actually a survey. We brought the actual foreman in and we sent out surveys, and we brought them into the room and we asked them, what would help you the most? What are your greatest pain points? What are your greatest inefficiencies, or the sources of your greatest inefficiencies? What keeps you from succeeding? And we got that feedback. We then had them even prioritize. So which one, bothers you the most, or which one affects you the most? And we addressed that way. And you might expect, material management and that piece, and equipment and tools was actually very, very high on that list. Thus, we've gone, and taken this and making this part of our suite of our digital foreman. But the other thing I want to talk about is, in doing this and in taking this approach with our foreman and with the focus on our front line and user adoption, because that's the other thing, is we go with more of a point solution best in class approach. What we're doing is we're putting our foreman at the table with the selection. We're bringing them to the table about what's most important to them. And then we're putting it on the devices that they're most comfortable with. And we just happen to be one of those people. We are actually standardizing to iOS because, as you would expect, more people have that device and they're more comfortable with that device, at least from what we've experienced. And so out of that, we're getting much better user adoption. Well, what we're learning is if we focus on that front end, everything else follows. The KPIs, the management, the project controls, everything that we need to do behind the scenes actually works very well if we enable the guys in the field and make that happen. So our approach with the foreman, as you can see here, and this slide represents it as an initiative, and we've taken it as, so we just like our smartphone. We open our phone and we hit our weather app to see what the weather's going to be like today or tomorrow or this weekend. We open our texting app to text someone. We open the phone app to make a phone call, and we open Twitter to make a tweet if you go that route. And so we're doing the same thing with the foreman. So we're giving them a device that says, okay, I'm going to use this because this is what's easiest for me, and this is what answers the mail for me. And for them in that selection, I will tell you guys, it was SiteSense, and there are a lot of reasons why. But it's putting that virtual, everyone at that table around the digital information. So you're pushing information out to that foreman, enabling him in the field, and you're pulling the information and everything that they need back into the office as the data are generated. So everybody's a customer, and I'll say it, everybody is a winner, right? And I think that I had I had that stat on the other slides, Barry, where it was like 35% increase in if you use mobile technologies in your tool time. And I want to share with you guys that we had a third-party consultant come in and do an assessment of our AWP implementation and our technology enablement, and we hit that increase, and it was in a pilot program. So it has really moved the needle for us in a lot of ways, and that includes SiteSense. Go ahead, Barry, you can go to the next one. So what I'm going to do here is tell you and show you all the stuff that Barry's been talking about. I, from the client perspective, can show you how that fits into how we're conducting work and how we're actually using it in the field. And this represents, for those of you that know AWP, and I know you guys do, for our pilot, we were actually just approaching and addressing the construction part or the installation work packaging. Now we brought some procurement sequencing in, we brought all the elements around planning and constraint mitigation and all the general objectives of AWP, but in reality, we started, the design was complete. This is what we're supposed to go build, and off we go, right? So that's what you're seeing here in this particular slide. So we planned our project. We planned our project from the model. We were able to take the estimating data, pull it into the model. We planned our packaging. From there, we could get not only plan to the right number of man hours per package, but we also could get our material requirements per work package. And then we could load that into SiteSense. So what I find very advantageous about SiteSense is not only does it have the workflow to allow you to track what I call procure, or most people call procure to pay. So it's from PO, when you should buy it, the need buy dates and everything as far as through receipt and then back to payment. But it also, in parallel, allows you to track it by need. So I have in the needs documents, I have my work packages and my MTO per work package, and I can establish need by dates there, and I can follow then from a procurement process and from a path of construction perspective, I can overlay my material requirements throughout construction, right? Will we deviate from that? Absolutely, we do, and we always will. But what is key with having this digitized and having a solution like SiteSense for us is it gives us our next best option. We know very clearly from the level of planning that we can be agile and we can make the best decisions in agility because we can see it all laying in front of us and we know what we're affecting by making that decision. So again, you like to believe that you can make a plan and work the plan. That's what I always like to do. But it's also very important to understand the full context of the data and all the digital data that you have so that you can make good decisions when you have to go to plan B. So that's what in the planning, that's what we're setting up within SiteSense is our packaging requirements, our material requirements, our need by dates, our equipment and tools requirements. And then we actually feed those even to fabrication so that we can prioritize the fabrication process. We bring all of that into SiteSense as well. Even we bag and tag our loose materials by package, and we're working on getting to where we're even kitting tools and things like that by package. So as you see, the top line of this of this visual here shows you that workflow around the material and the material requirement. That is the whole purpose around it, is to manage that constraint, which we all know is a very significant one in construction. And then similarly, then out to the field, as we push it out to the foreman, they also can see availability. They sign off for their materials, they have them delivered right at the workface. And again, back to that theme around enabling that foreman to do everything he needs to do in that moment. So let's talk about, let's back up a minute and say, okay, I'm very focused on the foreman. Yes, they're my guys and I got to enable them. But we're also talking, as Barry mentioned, we're talking planners. Our planners are in SiteSense every day. It's an important, actually what has come to play, or come, we didn't really expect this, is they're sort of the front end of the process, and then our material coordinators become the back end of the process. So we have both groups in, as well as project controls around scheduling, in and using SiteSense. But our material coordinators, it enables them. We've got guys, they're barcoding, as Barry mentioned, barcoding and receiving. There's a workflow for OS&D, so we can track issues. Everything, again, is right there at the table in one location. And the beautiful thing is everybody is looking at the same information. from a lessons learned perspective, I want to share with you guys, and I'm just real excited I'd love to talk to you guys about your AWP thoughts and your experiences there. But it even has started to change our role definition and roles and responsibilities, because people don't spend so much time hunting down material. Like when you go out onto a site and it's like, okay, so what is the responsibility of this general foreman, or on this crew, this guy that you've hired as a runner? Well, he goes and he tracks down and makes sure we have all the material. Well, don't need that anymore necessarily. So not only are we increasing time on tools, but we're sort of redefining, which is not a popular thing in construction, but we're redefining roles and responsibilities a bit to be more focused. And I think that's gone a long way as well. One other thing I want to talk about real quick is around integration. So one of the poll questions was around, do you approach it more from a point solution, best in class perspective, or do you want to go to it all in one platform? And I know everybody takes a different approach and has success with the different approaches. We have gone, as you can see, we've gone with a point solution, best in class, and it's more focused around that people and process perspective. We want the best tool to enable us in the field and the guys to be happier or be more comfortable in that solution and find it easier for what they do every day from an adoption perspective. But let's talk about the need for data integration does not go away, right? So if we stay in that separate best-in-class point solution, please understand, I understand what I'm doing is I'm ending up with lots of silos of data, right, potentially. But with the technology that's out there these days, and with companies like Intelliwave that with SiteSense open their API, I have full access to my data at any time, and they've been very cooperative in helping us work with our, we're working with a data connectivity vendor now to bring that backbone or that bridge that then pulls it all together. And as you guys know, with AI and all this other technology, these data connectivity companies are amazing with data tags and class libraries. And now with an AWP, we have our data threads identified. The integration can be there in a lot of ways. It's just depends on which approach you want to take. And right now, we're going to try to take this one. And then we're going to realize our data capital from that perspective using dashboarding, whether it's Power BI or whatever tools that we can plug in then to that data lake or that environment that we're going to create using our data connectivity. But I appreciate Intelliwave and SiteSense and how open they are, because that's very important when you're making that selection too, is to know that you can access your data and what it takes to get there, because then that's what overall from a success perspective gives you the ability to report and measure. SiteSense also has given us the ability to not only on the front end see those things and import that data both from a packaging and a procurement perspective, but then on the back end, it's also enabling us to visualize availability of material even in our model. So we're working with Barry and team around how we can do that as well back in our BIM model from a planning perspective. Because at the end of the day, our goal, again, doesn't always work this way, but our goal is that we don't issue a package to a foreman until he has everything he needs to get it done. And so that plays a large part in our day-to-day workface planning, package assignment meetings. SiteSense is always up on the board.
Awesome. No, we really appreciate the partnership as well, Kim. And one thing I wanted to kind of touch on here, this journey here and this map that you guys have developed didn't just spring up overnight, right? This is a culmination of time and effort of a lot of different resources, I'm sure. And one thing I wanted to maybe just touch base with you on and understand if explain to the group. What's the kind of approach when you bring new solutions on? Like we usually look at folks, is it a crawl, walk, run? What do you guys normally see with the folks in the field? And is it pilot stages, or how do you normally kind of push tools to the field?
It's best, and for folks that ask me, like, Kim, how do you get started? Like, where do we even start on stuff like this? I say you start listening. You start by listening. to what the need is. And because to me, your greatest success with technology implementation is to always understand the problem you're solving. If you're just bringing bright, shiny things to the table, some people are excited by that, and it is exciting. But at the end of the day, from a, hey, we're in business to make money, right? And if I'm trying to make money, I need to understand what problem am I solving, and what is the advantage, and what is my return on investment. So you do that by listening, quite frankly. You listen to what the problems that they are. And so then, as I mentioned before, we did the survey, we prioritized things, and then we put teams together to do an analysis around, okay, we need to get this material issue fixed. We need to get this time and progressing and productivity and EVMS stuff fixed. We need to get our document control and packaging and data electronically in the field fixed. And we need to get safety. Like we just attacked them module by module. Now, once we identified them, we did identify a pilot project that then we could push out. But here's another lessons learned I would share with you guys. Manage your expectations. So know that the power of that software, and I'll give you an example with SiteSense, and because Barry, you know, I said this to you. SiteSense has amazing power with IoT and all these other things with RFIDs and the readers, and you know, but for day one, that wasn't for us, right? And you have to understand first, from the digital maturity perspective, you got to get to digitize. You got to digitize things, and you got to standardize process. So you got to get people working in that workflow, and because it has to change how they work every day, or else the system is it's going to fail. So it has to become part of what they do every day. And as they do that, then you get the basics down, and you start getting good data. Then you can get pretty whiz bang with it, right? So manage your own expectations. Just because, you know, we are technology professionals, or we can see what can be, don't go all, I use the football analogy. A first down is fantastic. I still have the ball, right? I don't have to chuck a Hail Mary. I've still got the ball, right? So go for your first down, but have a strategy, know where you're going, and know what the possibilities are. That's my recommendation. Always have room to grow, but understand your path. Because if you put too much on them at once, they'll sit it down and they'll say, I can't do this. I can't do this. The other thing that you really have to have is and I'll commend our leadership, you have to have leadership support. You have to have not just managers, but executives saying, this is what we're going to do, and we need everybody on board. And that is also a very, very key component in all this.
Perfect. No, I really appreciate the partnership, Kim, and for you guys including us in that journey as well. And
thank you.
Stuart, just really quick here, I'm not sure if there's any questions on the
yeah, there are. We're just about at time, actually, and that's a good moment to come back in. We've got a few questions have arrived, so I'll get onto those in a moment. For those that just signed up for the hour, thanks very much. We'll send you the recording as soon as it's downloaded and been converted. Thanks very much for joining us. Thanks very much for participating in the poll questions and sending in your questions. For those that want to stay behind, we've got an extra session that runs to the top of the hour. I know Ian has got to drop off. Thanks very much, Ian. If you've already, are you there? Thanks very much for that.
Thank you, Ian.
Yeah, thanks Barry and Kim for the session. Very, very enlightening, and I'm sure that's given a lot of people a lot of information that they will want to ask more questions on. So what I will do is, if I can, is just I'll switch over to the slide deck that I've got, because I've got the questions in there. Just bear with me a second. Hang on, I'm not able to do it at a second. There we go. Right, show my screen. Right, I just need to jump forward a few questions on the. Okay, so my questions, or the questions, are. So the first one, thanks very much, Peter. Peter refers to the Crossrail project which for those that don't know was probably the largest, well, was the largest construction project in Europe, and puts a railway 20 miles worth of it underneath London. The beginning of the Crossrail construction project brought a belt and braces approach to health and safety, which ruled out the use of mobile phones. It took 3 years to change the policy. How does North America, Canada, US policies cater for digital transformation and mobility in the field when restrictions like we had at Crossrail are in place? Who wants to take that, Barry?
Yeah, I mean, you know, from that standpoint, I think you know, there's definitely, you know, different challenges that come with you know, locale of project and, you know, local restrictions, regulations, those types of things. You know, I think there's always a solution, you know, to try and solve things. And I mean, mobile devices definitely lend a hand to, you know, trying to be more efficient in the field, but you know, that definitely doesn't stop just there. You know, even just simply the fact of digitizing process can be really beneficial to the field as well. And you know, if there is that type of hurdle, that's a tough one to get over for sure. But you know, they even have devices nowadays that are, for example, you know, utilizing things like augmented reality and things like that, where you know, they're built into a hard hat and things like that. So maybe you can even get a little bit creative on those types of things where, you know, you're not necessarily sharing a device around a bunch of folks and running into those types of issues. So that would be one way to kind of combat it. And like I said, right, the ability for, you know, folks to still, you know, at least collaborate in a digital platform is definitely something that, you know, I would still see a lot of benefit in, even if it wasn't necessarily access from a mobile device in the field. You may lose a tiny bit of efficiency there for sure, but like I said, there is definitely ways you could potentially combat that through other methods of accessing the system. Sure.
Okay.
So I can add to that a little bit if that's okay.
Yeah.
So in the oil, gas, and chem spaces, you guys, a lot of those requirements that we run into are, of course, are safety issues. And I'm not sure in this scenario if that was a safety requirement or not, but we find that sometimes we run into safety requirements for intrinsically safe devices, right? And we sometimes, honestly, one of the things that we've started doing, and it takes a little time, it does, but we sometimes challenge the requirement. And we've actually been successful in that challenge a couple of times when we talk about where, and if we get specific about where the devices will be used, right? And we have gotten approval to either waive the requirement, or we've gotten the approval to actually use intrinsically safe cases. Now, don't get me wrong, they're not cheap. They're about $2,500 a piece. It's far more than the device itself. But once we have them, then we can reuse them and apply them as needed. So we've also addressed that from a workflow perspective. We've left in some cases, actually at some of our projects in Canada there, we've actually created muster points or places where folks would just leave their tablets there and the foreman would come back to that, from a standpoint of looking things up. So it's not precluded their use. It's just we've been able to adjust how we do things. Another example on a project we have is we had a situation where they didn't want, it was not a safety issue because it was a greenfield project, but it was an NDA type situation, so a security type situation, and they didn't want us taking photos. So that's another thing around disabling the camera and the device, or even in some cases we've had the devices made without a camera. And again, that's not cheap, but it's doable.
Yeah. The origins of it were around, as Pete put in his question, was health and safety. But the thing with it is other construction companies projects took the same line, and COMIT actually had a personal involvement in the overcoming the project issues, which went on to another project, which was also a huge infrastructure operation in London, and that was the Tideway tunnels. And one of our guys actually went into that and looked at some solutions, came up with a solution. I think there's a white paper floating around somewhere that was developed to get around the issue, and it was all to do. I mean, initially they said using a mobile phone is banned on sites anyway, but of course, if that defeats the object of trying to get mobile technology into the workplace, what do we do? Because we're gonna stifle that progress and hinder any development. So we took a look at it, and of course, one or two people in health and safety said, well, we'll just have corral areas where you can go and do things. But of course, if you need to take a picture of something, then you've got to be there right there with the with the unit. You can't do it from over there or over here or whatever. You've got to have the so it does defeat the purpose. So there was a solution, and the solution was to, well, look closely at who's using it, are they trained to use them properly, and whatever. I mean, for me, there's no difference in using an A-note drawing where you can't see anything apart from the drawing, or using a tablet or a telephone. But again, that's me. But I hope that, yeah, sorry.
Another thing that we've done on a safety side, which I think is very important, is using devices like this and this kind of practice in the field brings another safety element to the table. And we've started a campaign around, it's called Walking is Working.
Yeah.
So as long as we're walking, we're not looking at our tablets, right? we're staying focused, because you want to like avoid the trip hazards and the fall hazards and the other things that are going to happen that we realize every day because people are walking using their phones, right?
Yeah.
You find the same things are going to start happening in the field. So it's very important, I think, as you start to implement these types of solutions, that you also kind of fold it into your culture around those types of messages and those types of campaigns as well in safety.
Sure. Okay, thank you, Kim, and thanks, Barry. Peter asked another question. Thank you, Peter. With regard to the standardization of systems, it has been rare for the end user, the workforce operative, to be part of the consultation for technology solutions. And I'm aware of this, and my personal view, and what Peter says, he goes on to say, they tend to have to deal with predetermined non-standard solutions. So in other words, they're imposed on them, and it triples the amount of administration and therefore taking them away from the tools. It is good to see that new solutions, and the one you've demonstrated, Kim, and demonstrated, to good effect, are focused around the end user. Now, one of the things that we've done research projects on this in the past, and it focused on the user, and the outcome, if there's one item I'd actually draw everybody's attention to, is the ability to get the people that are going to use it involved in the process at the beginning. Don't just develop it and expect them to use it, because you're really missing the point if you do that. There was a number of, in fact, it was a venture that we did. COMIT did a joint project with FIATech in the US. FIATech is now part of CII. And that must have been 8, 9, 10, maybe 11 years ago now. And it looked at the operatives and who was going to use the technology, and the development of the technology ultimately needed to be done with their involvement. If you did it without, then it wouldn't work.
You're doing it to them. You're doing it to them at that point, and not with them. If you bring them to the table and you give them a voice, they even if they don't get what they want, they were given a voice and they participated, and you'll find that they'll take ownership in the success. Yes.
Yeah. And that really is the key to making it work. Because the other thing I found is, in the early days of the technology, bringing the technology on, was how can we make it as near as possible to the actual paper form that they're going to use. And that was the overarching driver. So of course there was opportunities to use the tablets, but use it in such a way that it replicated 100% the paper form that they've been used to filling out. If you can remember the Anoto digital pen, that the forms were actually digitized with the camera-driven pen, if you remember that, where you could write on the form and it would produce in digital form exactly what you'd done before. Yes, the pen was a bit of a different shape and whatever, the benefits of that were absolutely fantastic. And I think some organisations still use that. You know, to the modern day tech evangelist, it's a bit outdated. But to me, if it works and people are comfortable with it, then great.
That's
You know?
a very real aspect, and I've run into that as well. And I think what I've observed, and I don't want to generalize too much or be too negative about anything or any company that's coming in with a platform, but as we look at those in the platform and the solutions that try to like come to the table with everything and all of it like linked together, that's when I see, Stuart, that happening more, where you don't have that opportunity, because at that point everything becomes, and I'm going to use the word marginalized, that sounds very negative, but what happens is the focus becomes on data collection.
Yeah.
And for people that are data centric and technology friendly, we get that. Okay, I'm collecting data. And then at that point, it becomes about reporting, right? So I can have my form can be a report later on. And that's easy for us to understand and grasp. But for a person in the field that's just trying to do what they do and do it efficiently and effectively, a form puts it, it's a reason it's formed and it's organized like that. It puts it in context of their effort, right?
Yeah.
And it gives it a flow. And so I think that's a very valid point. And that's one of the things that we look for, is the ability to go with electronic forms, because it is about that user interface. When they're just scrolling through data entry or scrolling through, that they don't get that, because that's not helping them from what they're doing. A form does and can be organized as such.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we haven't any more questions, unless, no, I've just checked again. No, there's no more questions. So what I'm going to do then, I'll just ask for some closing comments. But before I do, I want to just give everybody that's on the call, I can just go back to where I was. Sorry, it jumped forwards. Thanks Barry and Kim for coming on today.
Thank you.
Thanks to the attendees for all the questions, and certainly been involved in the poll questions. That was quite enlightening. Our next happy hour is on the 6th of November, and that session on the 6th is to do with offsite manufacture design for manufacture and assembly. That'll be an enlightening one. We're just developing that now. But please watch out for that notice coming out. The other thing is, thanks very much to our sponsors, O2 Business and Rebim. Without them, we couldn't do what we do. And to answer the question I get asked repeatedly, and I don't mind answering it, join the conversation through the various social media links. The recording will be available as soon as it's downloaded and converted. So watch out for that on the website as well. There is a survey, a follow-up survey that will be sent out. Please, if you can, participate in that, and we'll collate the answers. I have asked this time if anybody's got any thoughts and ideas on which other productivity initiatives that we should include in future webinars. Then shoot them across. That'd be great to hear from people. So with that in mind, what I will say is closing statements. Barry, I'll ask you first, and then if there's anything to follow, Kim.
For sure. Yeah, no, thanks Stuart, thanks Jerry, thanks Ian, thanks to the COMIT community and the sponsors as well for helping put this together, and thanks Kim as well for being a great partner as we continue on this journey together. I really appreciate the folks attending the call today as well. And yeah, if there's any additional questions, love to continue the conversation. You can reach out to us on our website, or reach out to me directly as well, or LinkedIn, or many different ways to get a hold of us nowadays. But yeah, no, really excited to hear any follow-up questions or things like that come out of the session. Thanks again for having us.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much.
Now, I'll follow that and reiterate that. I would love to continue the conversation, guys. I'm very interested in what you guys are up to. I'm very glad to know of you now, and I appreciate your participation and your attention to hear and to listen to our journey. And again, I'm a lifelong learner, and I'm very interested and would love to continue the conversation. So if I can do that in any way, I would appreciate it. Opportunity.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much. We'll follow up. We'll be in touch. So I wish everybody a great rest of the day, great weekend, and we'll see you all again on the next call. Thank you.
Stay safe and well. Stay safe
Keep
and well.
safe, everyone.
Stay safe and
Bye.
well, yeah. Cheerio. Bye-bye. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.